The story begins as we see a boy named Gabimaru, who is about to be executed. But as the executioner readies his sword, striking his neck repeatedly, it ends up breaking, which shocks the officials. He returns to his cell, where we learn that he was trained as a shinobi since he was a child, so he's developed a superhuman body. A woman named Sagiri documents the event, noting that breaking a blade with his flesh is a simple task for a shinobi like him, and Gabimaru confirms this, saying someone with such terrible swordsmanship can't hurt him. The next day, the Lord orders the executioner to burn Gabimaru at the stake, but even when they set him on fire, they see that he's still alive, so the Lord becomes frustrated. Gabimaru returns to his cell unscathed, but he claims he's not trying to resist, and that he actually wants them to kill him. Sagiri informs him about her job to record events, so Gabimaru states that he doesn't know his parents, but he heard they were killed by the village chief when he was a baby. He claims he has no dream, because shinobis only live to kill as they're told, and we learn that he was captured when his cohorts betrayed him, because he wanted to leave the village. And he thinks the village chief had something to do with it, since the village doesn't allow anyone to leave. The following day, the Lord orders his men to have Gabimaru torn apart by bulls, but when they try it on him, he easily overpowers the bulls. Sagiri mentions that he appears to be resisting the execution, and asks him why he wanted to leave the village. Gabimaru claims he was the best in his village, receiving the chief's recognition, and he even married his daughter. However, he says he got fed up with his wife's naive behavior, so he told the chief that he wanted to leave the village, which is how he ended up in this situation. That evening, one of the observers warns Sagiri about Gabimaru, saying he's a hollow man who killed 20 people before he was arrested, but Sagiri wonders why a hollow man would fight so hard to the point he killed 20 men. In his prison cell, we learn that Gabimaru has actually been resisting the executions, but he decides to end it all tomorrow. During his next execution, he is boiled in hot oil, but he somehow survives it. He thinks he should have no lingering attachments, so he wonders why he can't die. The Lord is freaked out, just wanting things to be over with, but Sagiri informs him that arrangements have been made. They escort Gabimaru through a tunnel, and the Lord laughs, thinking Gabimaru is about to die. He is led to a room, where he sees Sagiri waiting for him. The Lord reveals that she is a sword tester and executioner from the Immortal clan, claiming she will be able to behead him with a single blow. Gabimaru imagines her cutting his head off, and he realizes that she's the real deal. He breaks his restraints, and Sagiri tries to take him out, but he dodges the attack. Gabimaru is shocked to learn his neck has been cut, and Sagiri continues to attack him as he evades. Sagiri says she can tell that he lied about his wife, and that he actually loves her, which is why he won't let himself be killed. Gabimaru realizes this as well, thinking back to how his time with his wife made him softer. He grabs onto a sword, using it to fight Sagiri, who asks him why he has been lying to himself. He says she knows nothing about the world he lives in, claiming that he's hollow. But in a flashback, his wife tells him he isn't hollow, as she hugs him, calling him a kind person since he is the only one who wasn't repulsed by her face. We learn that in their village, men are treated as soldiers while women are just there to bear children. The village chief wanted his daughter to remember this, so he burned her face to make her stop trying to live like an ordinary woman, but she tells him that people's hearts don't die so easily. He wanted to stop being a shinobi and live a quiet life with his wife, so he tells the chief about this, which is the real reason why he got betrayed. Back in the present, Gabimaru fights on, gaining momentum as Sagiri struggles to block his attacks. He claims he can never live like a human no matter how hard he tries, but Sagiri tells him he can, showing him a pardon that would dismiss all his crimes and grant him the shogun's protection, but under the condition that he goes to the underworld. This makes Gabimaru confused, so Sagiri tells him about a beautiful land called Shinsenkyo, which has recently been discovered. It is said that the immortality-granting elixir of life can be found on that land, so the shogun sent a search party to find the elixir. But one evening, a boat returned full of flowers, and when it was examined, there was also a body on board. The shogun learns about this, so he orders his men to gather criminals, seeing them as expendable, to send them to the island to bring back the elixir of life and pardon them if they are successful. Sagiri reveals she's there to look for potential candidates, seeing Gabimaru as a good fit. She tells Gabimaru his wife is waiting for him in the village, and the only way for him to reunite with her is to join the expedition. The Lord still wants Gabimaru dead, ordering his men to attack, but Gabimaru uses his ninjutsu, unleashing fire from his body, allowing him to defeat all the guards in the room. The Lord falls to his knees, as Gabimaru agrees to join the expedition, determined to make it back alive. In a flashback, Sagiri witnesses her father performing an execution, which was so perfectly carried out that the man didn't even realize he'd been beheaded. Sagiri made it her goal to replicate his move, and when it came time for her to perform executions, she managed to do it well, but she imagines the people she killed haunting her. A man named Aizen observes that there is doubt and fear in her swordsmanship, which makes people die painful deaths. He tells Sagiri to look at the reflection on her sword, as he states that the truth is reflected in the blade. Back in the present, Sagiri puts a blindfold on Gabimaru, and she makes him join the other criminals, as they are informed the shogun is sitting before them. They are all given orders to travel to Shinsenkyo and return with the elixir of life, saying the successful criminal will be pardoned. The speaker describes the island, but the criminals interrupt him, saying it sounds like a fairy tale. The criminals are ordered to remove their masks, and they see a man with flowers coming out of his body. We learn that the man returned alive from the expedition, but he had lumps all over his body, and they started blooming the next day. The criminals begin to have doubts, not wanting to risk their lives in the expedition, but an official reminds them they have all been sentenced to death, so going to the island is considered a generous offer. A criminal named Narugai notices that they don't know anything about the island, wondering if the elixir is even there. An official tells them they are free to drop out, so one of the men tries to leave, but he is immediately executed. The official reveals that they will have the Yamada clan serve as monitors while on the island, so if they try anything funny, they will be killed on the spot. He warns the criminals not to try anything, and he adds that if their monitors die for whatever reason, they will also be killed. The shogun whispers something into the official's ear, and the official tells them that their numbers need to be reduced before going to the island, because they don't have the resources to accommodate all of them. The criminals are confused, but a man named Chobe calls them idiots, as he chokes another criminal to death. He points out that the officials are doing nothing, so he concludes that the officials want them to kill each other, and they all begin to fight, as the shogun watches on with excitement, but the official thinks this is just pointless violence. The shogun asks about the criminals with the most exceptional skills, and the official tells him about them, saying the most notable among them is Gabimaru. But when they look at him, no one is even attacking him. Aizen notices how the violence is making Sagiri overwhelmed, telling her it will be even more brutal on the island, so he questions her capabilities, thinking she isn't suited for the job. Aizen tells her she should just live quietly in her mansion, and Sagiri tells him that she would have if she could. In a flashback, we see Sagiri running away from some bullies, as they make fun of her family for making a living through people's deaths. But one day, she picks up a sword, and she sees the reflection on it, allowing her to see the spirits haunting it. Back in the present, some of the criminals think about escaping, so they charge at Sagiri, seeing her as an easy target. Aizen wonders if she can handle them, but Sagiri has accepted her fate as an executioner, and she easily takes them all out, but she starts to feel haunted by her victims again. But the spirits disappear, as Gabimaru says that killing people is never okay. Gabimaru asks if there is another way to choose who's going on the expedition, because not everyone wants to kill each other. The official threatens him, telling him to watch his tongue, as he orders a man to attack him. He throws a stone at Gabimaru, but he easily dodges it. Gabimaru wants to talk it out, but the criminal refuses, leaving him with no choice but to kill him, since he needs to survive. He approaches the man, saying he's about to be burdened, as he starts taking out the other criminals with such brutality that even the shogun is unsettled. Sagiri looks at his reflection through her sword, and she sees countless souls around him, but they don't seem to disturb him. So Sagiri realizes what she needs is not to get rid of her fear and doubt, but the strength to take on the burdens of the lives she took. The officials stop them, telling them they will be joining the expedition, and we learn that the 10 criminals who will be joining the expedition are the same criminals who have exceptional skills. They all board a ship, and we see the island as they slowly arrive. Gabimaru remembers when the village chief was pierced by multiple weapons, but he didn't fall, proving his immortality, and it was apparently due to a medicine he acquired from a land across the sea. They arrive at Shinsenkyo, where Gabimaru tells Sagiri that the elixir of life is real, but he isn't sure if they will find it on this island. They explore the island, as Sagiri comments on how beautiful the place is, but Gabimaru thinks it's creepy, saying they don't know what's out there. He breaks his restraints, and Sagiri tells him that he's not allowed to do that, but Gabimaru tells her to let it slide, explaining how they only have a strange drawing as a clue, and their food is only good for 3 days. However, Sagiri threatens to kill him, telling him to bind his hands, as she explains she is not his friend, and her role is his executioner, so he reluctantly complies. As he lets Sagiri tie his hands, he suddenly gets hit by a giant steel ball, blowing him away. The ball returns to a criminal named Kayan, who thinks he just got rid of his target, but Gabimaru gets back up, cracking his neck as he admits that it got dislocated. Sagiri explains Kayan is a warrior monk who steals the weapons of the people he's killed, but Gabimaru points out that his hands aren't restrained, so Sagiri asks Kayan's executioner Kisho about it. Kisho says they can just tie their hands on the way back, telling Sagiri she's the lowest ranked executioner because she's too rigid. Kayan displays his other weapons, wanting to test them out on Gabimaru. Gabimaru doesn't want to waste time fighting, saying that the others will get ahead of them, but Kayan says that since they have no leads, he is better off taking out the other criminals and then taking his time to look for the elixir, so Gabimaru realizes he has no choice but to fight. Kayan charges at him, but Sagiri still tells him to bind his hands. Kayan smashes his head, but the mace shatters, so he brings out other weapons to attack Gabimaru, who continues to tie his hands while he endures the blows. Kayan thrusts his spear at Gabimaru, who has just finished tying his hands. He breaks the spear, launching Kayan into the air, and as his weapons fall toward Gabimaru, he kicks one of the spears and stabs Kayan in the chest. Sagiri thinks Gabimaru won with a single attack, but Kayan gets back up, saying they're just getting started, but he easily gets defeated by Gabimaru, who uses his own weapons against him. Gabimaru wants to continue their quest, as Kisho beheads Kayan, and he heads back to the ship. Gabimaru wonders if he wants to fight, but Kisho says he is just doing his job and doesn't take any sides, even considering himself lucky for getting out so quickly, reminding Sagiri she will be spending time with a dangerous criminal. Kisho tells them about how the other criminals are breaking the rules, and he predicts they will continue to kill each other until there is only one left standing. We see Aizen tying their boat to a tree, when his criminal Rokuroda gets hungry and suddenly attacks him. He tries to defend himself, but his sword is shattered, and he ends up being eaten by Rokuroda. Some of the other criminals meet their end, as Kisho explains that more will be added since they are expendable, revealing that they are recruiting people from Gabimaru's village, as well as the Amada clan. As he leaves, Kisho warns Sagiri not to let her guard down, and she starts to wonder about Gabimaru's true character. At that moment, Gabimaru suddenly attacks her, but she manages to push him back. Gabimaru recalls when the chief killed his parents, it was because they wanted to leave the village. The chief taught Gabimaru that emotions make a person weak, and he won't be able to protect anything unless he is strong. He exchanges blows with Sagiri as he thinks about this, and Sagiri informs him that killing her is against the rules, but Gabimaru says he needs to find the elixir before the other shinobis from his village arrive, seeing her as a hindrance. He continues to attack Sagiri, who thinks he should be executed immediately, but she finds herself hesitating, and we learn that Gabimaru has the same problem, not knowing why he can't bring himself to kill her. Gabimaru remembers how his wife told him to follow his emotions, and we learn that he has been experiencing emotions since he met his wife, which got in the way during his missions. Gabimaru sees an opening, but he stops as he is about to deal the finishing blow, so he gets pushed back. He sees this as a weakness, thinking he won't be able to survive, so he continues his assault, as he thinks about the chief's advice, making him hollow again. He breaks Sagiri's sword, and he is about to cut her down, but she uses her sheath to defend herself. Gabimaru eventually comes out on top, ready to deal the finishing blow, but he struggles to finish her off, admitting he still has emotions left, and he starts crying, thinking he has become weak. Sagiri tells him it's not weakness, but the seed of strength, as she believes that not fleeing from his emotions is strength. She decides to overlook his behavior, wanting to see him face his emotions and reclaim his life, as she tells him he is no longer his old self. Meanwhile, the criminal Tamiya realizes his hand has been stung by a butterfly, and he recalls what happened to the man who returned from the expedition, so he quickly slices his hand off and kills the insect. His executioner Fuchi is confused by this, but Tamiya shows him the human-faced butterfly, saying that it's not from their world. At that moment, His severed hand transforms into flowers, and more creatures appear around them, including a giant abomination. Meanwhile, Gabimaru and Sagiri are also surrounded, with a fish monster standing before them, so he tells her to stand back, preparing to take it on. In a flashback, we learn that Tamiya was an extremely skilled swordsman, and he agreed to become the officer of a certain lord. But one day, he has a drink with his lord, but he hears a comment which makes him upset, so he ended up destroying the mansion's gate and killing his lord, which made an entire clan hunt him down, resulting in his arrest. We see Tamiya with Fuchi as they arrive on the island, and Tamiya notices how his executioner has tools for dissections. Fuchi explains that the Yamada clan also dissects bodies to help produce effective medicines. The fish creature uses its arms to attack Gabimaru, but he easily evades and kicks the monster's head. However, the creature grabs onto his foot and slams him against the ground. Gabimaru quickly recovers, as he remembers the shinobi rule, which states that he must not fight an unknown enemy. He thinks about retreating, but the creature suddenly restrains him, smashing his body against the trees before throwing him away. Sagiri is surprised he is actually injured, and they think they should run away, but they soon realize there are giants approaching them from all directions. Wanting to survive, Gabimaru goes berserk, using his ninjutsu to destroy a giant's head. He goes on to butcher the other giants, while Sagiri watches in awe, thinking about how dangerous the job is. A giant suddenly attacks her from behind, which she evades, but centipede monsters grab onto her, restricting her movement as the giant prepares to strike. Gabimaru cuts the giant's arm, allowing him to save Sagiri, but this snaps him out of his berserk state. The fish monster is about to attack them, but the executioner named Genji arrives and takes out the creature. A ninja named Yuzuri joins them, calling Gabimaru impressive for killing all the monsters by himself. Gabimaru questions her motives as she approaches him, trying to seduce him into working with her, but he ends up restraining her, saying her seduction won't work on him. Yuzuri claims she just wanted to try it out, but she is serious about working together. Sagiri wonders why she has two executioners with her, so Genji explains how he was assigned to another criminal, who was killed by her. So because of this, he concluded that one executioner may not be able to control her, so he decided to join them. However, Gabimaru finds the explanation weird, so they conclude that he must have been seduced. The other executioner introduces himself as Senta, and Yuzuri tells them about the creatures in the area, saying finding the elixir is important, but they can't charge in without a plan. Sagiri tells him there is no problem with working together, and Yuzuri hugs onto him, but Gabimaru restrains her again, telling her he can't trust her, but she uses her legs to bring him closer, saying he doesn't need to trust her, because they will eventually betray each other because only one of them will be pardoned, so she suggests just using each other for the time being. Gabimaru backs off, as he wonders how she can help him, and Yuzuri reveals she has plenty of information, telling them that the real danger on the island is the human-faced butterfly, which has hallucinogens and poison. She reveals how she got the information, saying she tested the bugs out on another criminal, who she ended up killing. Senta tells them about the items the monsters are wearing, mentioning that they have Buddhist designs, which he finds strange. Yuzuri tells them there is still much they don't know, so they should work together to learn more. Gabimaru says he wants information, but he only agrees to fight together, not wanting to cooperate with her fully. Sagiri watches them as they interact, thinking about what she has done since arriving on the island, but she suddenly collapses. In a flashback, we see a man named Toma, who is about to become an executioner, and Aizen tells him he should take the final step by killing a criminal, thinking about which execution would be suitable. Toma says he has a request, and he goes to his brother Chobei, telling him he knows how to make the magistrate's men stop pursuing them. Back in the present, the brothers are surprised to see three giant creatures standing before them. Chobei immediately attacks them, as Toma reveals that his brother's strength is to quickly understand situations. We learn that the brothers lived in poverty after their parents died, and they were taken by bandits. While with the bandits, Chobei somehow controlled the situation, and he eventually became the bandit king. He cuts down a giant, but his knife breaks, so he runs away with Toma, but a giant grabs onto Toma's hair, as Chobei returns with an axe. Chobei gets hit in the face by a staff, and the monster tells them that murder is a sin. The other creatures start talking to them, which makes Toma believe they're in hell, but Chobei starts cutting through the creatures, and he manages to defeat all of them. Chobei thinks that the elixir must be real since there are monsters protecting it, so he decides to take out everyone on the island and take the elixir for themselves. Sagiri regains consciousness, and Genji tells them they're safe in a cavern. He informs Sagiri she was poisoned by the butterfly's scales, but she immediately gets back up, wanting to monitor Gabimaru. She leaves the cavern, and she sees Gabimaru preparing dinner, while Senna fixes their torn clothes. While having dinner, Gabimaru reveals he scouted the island, and he learned something about the flora, saying he found several flowers resembling the man they were shown, which makes them conclude that the people who went missing have now turned into plants on the island. Gabimaru wasn't able to find anything that looks like the clue they were given, but Senna suggests they shouldn't rely too much on the illustration, since the officials don't know much about the island. Sagiri notices how the creatures on the island have an animal parts stacked on top of humanoid forms, and Senna adds that they were items that seemed religious. He says they're like malformed gods, which seems to be the theme for the island and the creatures. Later that day, Genji tells Sagiri to return to the mainland, because he believes she isn't strong enough to survive. However, Senna thinks the return trip wouldn't be so easy, since most people don't return from the island. We meet the executioner Tenza, as he tries to escape the island with Narugai. They eventually stumble upon a ship, but as they get closer, they realize that the ship has been destroyed, along with the other ships around it. Tenza speculates the ships all attempted to leave the island, and they see creatures moving around them, so Tenza pulls out his sword, but a sea monster attacks them, forcing them to jump out of their boat. They land on a shipwreck, and more tentacles appear around them. Tenza slices through them as they search for a usable ship, and Narugai wonders if she is being punished. Narugai remembers when she led a group of samurai to her village, and they ended up wiping her whole village out, but the men spared her, planning to use her to find the other villages. While she was locked up, Tenza found her, knowing she is innocent, and showed her the pardon offer. As they run, they come across Kisho, who is now transforming into flowers. Tenza tries to talk to him, but a tentacle cuts him in half. Kisho's body reminds Narugai about her dead grandfather, so she falls to her knees, telling Tenza to escape without her, as she blames herself for the deaths of everyone in her village. Tenza defends her from the tentacles, asking her if she wants to die, and Narugai realizes she wants to survive, so Tenza gives her a sword. They fight through the tentacles together, allowing them to reach a boat, which they use to return to the island. They realize that the currents prevent them from escaping, and sea monsters seem to surround the island, so they decide they will need to gather allies for the return trip. Meanwhile, Genji tells Sagiri to sail home, but Senna thinks she could help if Gabimaru needs to be stopped, saying he seems to have changed after spending time with her. That evening, she goes to Gabimaru, who asks if she's feeling better, because he knows the wound he gave her made the insect's poison act quickly. He reveals how Sagiri calmed him down, and Gabimaru claims she is stronger than him, but he doesn't know how to explain it to her. But he tells her that experience can help her realize her strength. The next day, Sagiri tells Genji she won't be leaving, so he pulls out his sword, trying to scare her, but she instantly disarms him. Genji retrieves his sword as he reprimands her, but Rokuroda suddenly appears behind him, and he gets blown away. As a child, Rokuroda had an insatiable appetite, and he loved playing with things using his hands. However, he eventually went on a frenzy, and ate everyone from his village. Rokuroda targets Sagiri, but Gabimaru kicks him away. Rokuroda gets back up, and Gabimaru sees him as a dangerous man, wondering how his kick didn't hurt him. He remembers how he was trained to analyze the enemy's abilities, so he decides to observe his opponent before making a move. Rokuroda uproots a tree and throws it at him, as Gabimaru dodges it. He thinks Rokuroda is stronger than him, so he asks for Yuzuri's help, but she reminds him she's only responsible for gathering information, as she starts cheering for him. Rokuroda wildly swings at him as he evades the attacks, thinking he could die in a single hit. Gabimaru tries launching rocks at his enemy, but it seems to have no effect at all. Seeing this, he takes out his sash, using ninjutsu to make it as hard as steel, but even this is proven to be ineffective. He uses his other techniques, but nothing works, and he starts to wonder how he can take out his opponent. Sagiri tries to treat Genji's wounds, but he tells her to stop, knowing he can't be saved. He tells her to run, but she refuses to leave him, telling him not to give up. This makes Genji realize she has chosen her way of life, so he gives her his sword, explaining how a warrior's sword is his soul. He wants her to kill Rokuroda, as he starts seeing her as one of them. Gabimaru is now running out of options, thinking the only way to beat him is to use his fire technique, but he knows close combat is too dangerous. But Rokuroda's finger is suddenly cut off, as Sagiri joins the fight. Gabimaru finds her timing impeccable, and he knows they need to decapitate him, but he's too tall, so he tells Sagiri to go for the leg. As Gabimaru deflects Rokuroda's attack, Sagiri strikes his leg, but it does nothing to him, and she falls back as he swings at her. Sagiri realizes she's screwed up, because she was too aggressive, so she lets go of her emotions. Rokuroda strikes, and Gabimaru manages to evade his attack, but he realizes his leg has been sprained. Sagiri strikes Rokuroda's arm, but it does nothing, and she points out that she needs to strike the gaps between his bones to land a decisive blow, so she needs him to be hunched over for her to behead him. Rokuroda suddenly cries, letting out a powerful scream which overwhelms their senses. He strikes Gabimaru before he can even react, slamming him against the ground. Gabimaru survives this attack, but he falls to his knees, coughing up blood. Rokuroda is about to deal the finishing blow, but Sagiri gets in the way. At that moment, she achieves a serene state of mind, easily deflecting the attack, which surprises everyone. As she fights, Senna reveals that Sagiri is the lowest-ranked executioner, because as a woman, she is not suitable to lead their clan. However, in terms of pure skill, the executioners know she is better than most of them. Rokuroda loses his footing, and Sagiri is about to finish him off, but he jumps away. Gabimaru comes up with an idea, as he uses fire ninjutsu to throw flaming projectiles, burning everything around them. Yuzuri runs away, knowing Gabimaru is planning to suffocate Rokuroda with the smoke. The plan works, as Rokuroda gets down on his knees, struggling to breathe, and Sagiri prepares to deal the finishing blow. He tries to strike back, but Gabimaru pushes his hand against the ground, and Sagiri manages to execute him. However, the look in his eyes makes Sagiri realize that he was living a misunderstood life, not knowing how strong he was, so he accidentally killed people when he just wanted to play with them. Gabimaru gets worried the monsters might be drawn to the fire, so they leave the area, leaving behind Genji's remains. They hide as giants make their way to the area, and Gabimaru suggests going in the direction where the monsters came from, thinking it could lead them to the elixir. They catch up to Yuzuri and Senta, and they are all surprised to see a village on the island. Meanwhile, the brothers go deeper into the forest, where they see two beings making out. Chobei wonders if they are monsters, and the yellow one named Jufa becomes angry at them for spoiling the mood. Gabimaru wonders if the residents of the island are friends or foes. He sees a girl spying on them, so he runs after her. He catches up to her, removing her hood, and he's surprised to see that she's just a child. A tree monster suddenly takes a swing at him, and the girl continues to run away. Gabimaru chases after her, thinking she knows something about the island. He dodges the tree's attack and kicks it away, while Sagiri rushes after him, leading their companions to deal with the creature. Yuzuri removes Senna's glasses, saying she doesn't want him to see her techniques, as she drinks from a cup, causing strange liquid to come out of her body. Gabimaru catches up to the girl, grabbing onto her hand, but the girl throws him to the ground, which surprises him, because a child shouldn't be able to perform such a move on him. Sagiri runs after the girl, telling her they just want to talk, and this causes her to stop, letting Sagiri catch up to her. The girl suddenly tries to punch her, but Gabimaru blocks the attack. He notes that the girl's strength is on another level, as the blow causes him to take a few steps back. Gabimaru tells her he is in a desperate situation, as he grabs onto some vines, wrapping them around the girl and suspending her in midair. The girl starts crying, so they release her, and Sagiri calms her down. Yuzuri joins them, telling them she worked hard to defeat the creature. They gather around to discuss what to do next, when the tree creature tells them to return the girl, as it offers to take them to the village and tell them about the elixir. Yuzuri doesn't trust the creature, but it mentions they have a bath in their village, which instantly makes her change her mind. The creature takes them to the village, which looks like a ghost town, and it tells them it wasn't like this 1,000 years ago. It takes them to its house, where Yuzuri takes a bath with Sagiri, while the monster gives the men some food. Gabimaru is suspicious, asking the monster about the island and the elixir. They gather around the food, as the creature reveals that the island is called Kotaku, and it's an island where gods reside. The monster confirms that the elixir exists, telling them about the legend where it is known as Tan. Gabimaru asks about its location, so the monster draws 3 circles on the floor, saying they are now in the second circle, and the elixir is somewhere at the center of the island, which is known as Horai. Gabimaru asks for proof that the elixir exists, and the creature tells them they won't doubt his story once they meet the Tensen, which are beautiful and immortal creatures. We see Chobei after he has cut Jufa in half, but the body regenerates, and he is as good as new. The tree claims that the Tensen are completely on another level, explaining it has no reason to lie, because they are all going to end up killed by the Tensen. The brothers are defeated by Jufa, and they are thrown into a pit, which is filled with humans that have transformed into flowers. Toma helps his brother as he regains consciousness, and the tree reveals how the lives of those transformed into flowers become the source of Tan, and the people feel eternal bliss. It introduces itself as Hako, and the girl is Mei, and reveals they have been living on the island for centuries. After that, Gabimaru and Sagiri go to the bathroom, where they run into Mei. She cries at first, but Gabimaru says everyone just shares the bath in his village. Sagiri notices a huge scar on Mei's body, and Gabimaru remembers how his wife told him about the importance of getting proper rest, as she helped him take a bath. He tells Mei not to be ashamed of her scars, because the most beautiful woman he knows has a large scar, saying appearances don't matter, and Sagiri is surprised hearing this. As they walk away, Gabimaru remembers his priorities, thinking he doesn't have time to sit around chatting. In a flashback, we see that Tenza was raised in the slums, and his parents never fed him well, so he had no choice but to steal from other people to survive. One day, he bumps into a group of swordsmen who look down at him, so he ends up beating them up, but they are saved when an executioner named Shion interferes. Back in the present, Tenza walks around the shore with Narugai when a Tensen named Zujin suddenly approaches them. It transforms into a man and asks them about all the dead monsters, wondering if they are the ones responsible. They try to run away, but Zujin immediately catches up to them, blasting Tenza away with a pulse of energy. Narugai quickly backs away, making her way to the downed Tenza. As Zujin walks to her, Tenza suddenly slashes his eyes, but it instantly regenerates. Tenza tells Narugai they're going to escape as he unleashes a combo, slicing Zujin into pieces, before giving the signal to run. As they run, Zujin blocks their path as he regenerates, but Shion suddenly throws his sword at Zujin, giving the duo time to escape. We learn that although Shion is blind, he can see through his other senses. They are able to get away, and we learn that Shion is Tenza's master. Shion says he was about to go home, but he couldn't find a current that leads out of the island. He says he eventually found a current that leads out, but he sensed a presence like nothing he had ever experienced before. Knowing there is only so much he can do alone, he decided to look for allies on the island, but he asks Tenza why he is helping Narugai, as he reveals how he executed the criminal that tried to seduce him. Tenza says Narugai is innocent, reminding Shion how he took him in, as he vouches for the girl. Shion decides to listen to him, and he decides to take them to the current that he found, but Zujin suddenly appears behind the duo. Shion dashes to save them, but his neck starts bleeding. Tenza tries to attack Zujin, unleashing a powerful flurry of slashes, but Zujin easily dodges it, and counters with a flick of his finger, creating 4 holes in Tenza's body. We see Tenza and Shion in another flashback, as Shion reveals how he likes to help people during his spare time, seeing potential in Tenza. He teaches Tenza how to wield a sword, telling him his sword skills will help him protect someone he cares about. Tenza thinks he has no potential, and he decides to quit, but Shion tells him he can only quit once he lands a hit on him. As he leaves the dojo, Tenza encounters Aizen, who wants to have a walk with him. Aizen takes him to the cemetery, where he shows Tenza the grave of Shion's former junior named Teshin. He lacked motivation like Tenza, and decided to leave the dojo, but he lived a life of crime because he struggled to feed himself. And in the end, Shion had to execute him, but this made him even more passionate about helping others and becoming a mentor. Aizen tells Tenza to land the blow on Shion, so he asks Shion to spar with him, and even though he keeps on losing, he refuses to give up. He eventually hits Shion, but he has already changed his mind, wanting to stay at the dojo with his master. Tenza knows he is about to die, but he has finally found something he wants to protect, so he gets back up and starts pounding Zujin with his fists. He tries to do everything he can to help his companions escape, but Zujin unleashes another energy blast, blowing a hole in his stomach. He tries to tell his companions to escape, but he can't because his throat has been damaged. Shion seems to understand what he's saying, and he runs away with Narugai. Tenza continues to attack Zujin, and he fights to his last breath, giving the others time to escape. They mourn the death of Tenza, and Shion swears he will get revenge for him. Back at the village, Sena can't seem to make sense of the information they've gathered so far, and Sagiri tells him to take a break, but he refuses. That evening, Gabimaru remembers how it would be dangerous to act without a plan, because there are still too many mysteries they need to solve. But while Sena sleeps during his watch duty, Gabimaru leaves, trying to reach Horai. He eventually stops as he hears weird voices, and he reaches an area full of strange trees, which appear to be praying. He goes in the direction they are facing, and he finds a giant door, which he thinks could lead to the elixir. But before he can open it, Zujin appears behind him, telling him to leave. He asks Zujin if he can turn humans into elixirs, and Zujin suddenly dashes to attack him, but Gabimaru swiftly responds, breaking his arm. He follows up with a powerful kick, breaking Zujin's neck, but it quickly snaps back into place. Gabimaru dodges Zujin's attacks, and counters with a spinning kick, using his fire technique to light his head on fire. The fire consumes Zujin's body, and Gabimaru thinks he has secured victory, but Zujin suddenly punches him, sending him crashing against the wall. Gabimaru survives the attack, and they continue their battle, as he assesses the situation, wondering how he can defeat the Tensen. He manages to land a kick, but it gives him a strange feeling, as Zujin coughs up blood, and he wonders why the attack was successful. Zujin changes to his female form, and he starts attacking with a barrage of energy blasts. Gabimaru is brought to his knees, but he is determined to succeed in his mission no matter what, so he tanks the blows as he dashes forward, allowing him to close the distance. They exchange blows, with neither of them backing down, as Gabimaru plans to destroy Zujin faster than he can heal, and he actually manages to overpower the Tensen, tearing his body apart. Zujin smiles as his body suddenly transforms into a giant flower monster, which uses a lightning spell, destroying the area around it. Gabimaru survives, and he tries to fight back, but he is no match for Zujin's lightning, and his body reaches its limit. The monster continues its assault, and he wakes up in a room with his wife, thinking he was just having a nightmare, but he realizes he is hallucinating since he is about to die. The monster grabs onto him as it proceeds to squeeze him to death, but he remembers how he was trained to inflict as much damage as possible before dying. So he unleashes fire from his body, burning the monster's arm, before he falls to the ground. Zujin prepares to deal the finishing blow, but Mei appears and protects him with a shield, helping him escape. The next morning, the group searches for Gabimaru and Mei. Hako reveals that there are 7 Tensens, and we see them gathered in one location as they discuss how fierce the humans are. Jufa blames Zujin for failing to take down the humans, blasting his head off as he comments on Zujin's ugly appearance, seeing how he's been using too much Tao, and mocks him for using his transformation against a human. The ruler of Kotaku, Rien, stops Jufa, telling him they are a family, and he's the only one who can punish Zujin. Jufa reports how he threw the 2 brothers into the pit, thinking they should have already turned into flowers, but Rien thinks that the humans are different from the ones they have dealt with before, and we see that the brothers were able to escape from the pit. Zujin claims he was able to kill Gabimaru, and they all share a drink, which helps Zujin recover his human form. According to legend, there was a hermit who mastered their art and became a god split into 7 parts, which are now known as the Tensens. Hako tells this story to everyone, saying he learned it back when he was a child, as he claims he once looked human. He reveals how everyone on the island were humans who lived long lives, but they realized that despite their extended lifespan, they started transforming into trees, and this caused them to slowly lose awareness. But before they completely lost it, they gathered at a particular location to ensure that their souls would reach Horai after death, which explains why there were trees praying close to Horai. He further explains that Horai is the final resting place of souls, but the Tensens get to choose which souls will enter. Meanwhile, Gabimaru regains consciousness, and he recalls his encounter with Zujin, thinking there must be a way to defeat the Tensen. He realizes they are not gods, so they can be killed, but he needs to have a plan, knowing he can't do it alone. Fuchi and Tamiya suddenly arrive, as Tamiya comments on his condition, wondering if it's time for him to die. They size each other up, thinking about fighting, but Fuchi tells Tamiya they should focus on gathering information as he pulls out his sword, wanting to get some answers from Gabimaru without killing him. But Gabimaru bows before them as he proposes working together, and Tamiya tests him by threatening to strike him down, but Gabimaru doesn't move, so they know he's not trying to fool them. Fuchi asks him why he wants to do this, so Gabimaru tells them about the Tensins, and they are surprised to learn that such powerful creatures exist. Fuchi doesn't trust him, but Tamiya joins him, wanting to fight the Tensins, as he reveals how he isn't even interested in the pardon. We learn that Tamiya wants his name to go down in history by defeating the Tensins, while Fuchi wants to dissect their remains. They decide to work together, and Gabimaru is about to give them more information when Mei wakes up. Gabimaru is surprised to see that Mei has grown up in such a short period. She calls out Gabimaru's name, and he realizes she can now talk. He thanks her for saving his life, asking her if she's like the Tensin. Elsewhere, Senda concludes that the religious system on the island is man-made. He thinks the creator of the island just wanted humans that transformed into flowers to return, and he sees it as a clue that could help them find the elixir and escape. Mei tells them about the Tao, which is the power that the Tensin use, but she can only offer a vague explanation because she still isn't used to speaking. On the other hand, Hako explains that everything in the world is created by the flow of Tao, and it has something to do with the origin of the universe. Despite his explanation, the group still finds it difficult to understand. Nurugai tries to ambush Shion, but he disarms her and makes her sheath her sword, saying he'll never teach her how to use it. She implores him to teach her because she doesn't want to watch her loved ones die. Hearing this, Shion tells her how everything in the world produces unique waves, which is what he uses to see the world around him. He goes on to explain how using the waves also improves one's physical capabilities, which is quite similar to how Hako describes the benefits of mastering Tao. Shion states it's difficult to sense the waves, since one must be in a balanced state of mind. He tells Nurugai she isn't wielding the blade properly, as he pulls out his sword, demonstrating how to wield it. At that moment, monsters appear around them, and Shion can sense their presence, so he takes them out one by one as he gives Nurugai tips for fighting. A group of monsters make their way to Gabimaru and his allies, so Tamiya springs into action, killing all the monsters at once, and he lifts Mei up, telling her to teach him the power of Tao, as more monsters approach them. Gabimaru observes the monsters, and he sees a silhouette behind them. Meanwhile, two of the Tensins discuss how the humans merge into flowers after being thrown into the pit, allowing them to harvest tan efficiently. They think escaping the pit is unlikely, because the humans that are transformed into flowers will stop them as they try to escape. But we see Chobei climbing up the pit, as the transformed humans try to stop him, but he powers through, allowing them to reach the surface. Chobei is determined to kill the Tensins, saying their weakness is their lower body, as he points out that the Tensins started regenerating from there. So he suggests aiming for that area, and Toma is impressed by his brother's ability to read the situation. A monster suddenly appears, and it seems willing to talk, saying it received orders from the Tensin to investigate. He introduces himself as a doshi, saying his colleagues are scouting the other humans on the island. He explains how doshis are the right hand of the Tensin because they are capable of reason. The doshi wants the brothers to return to the pit, so Chobei tries to kick it, but it dodges and hits him in the face. But Chobei stands his ground, grabbing onto the doshi's arm and using his brute force to cut it off. The arm regrows, and the doshi summons monsters to deal with them. Toma swiftly deals with the monsters as Chobei continues his fight with the doshi. It senses his Tao as he attacks, and he comments how attacks from one who cannot use Tao are trivial because he can instantly regenerate from it. It sees a disturbance in Chobei's Tao, seeing it as a blind spot, and Chobei gets slashed, falling to the ground. The doshi comments on how fragile humans are, and he plans to return him to the pit, but Chobei suddenly drives his fist through the monster's face, and he gets back up. The doshi wonders how Chobei was able to regenerate, thinking he merged with the plants during his time in the pit. Chobei mentions how he sensed something from the doshi, and he speculates that it's the key to defeating the Tensin. The doshi attacks with the intent to kill, but Chobei is able to block the attack. The impact breaks his arms, but it quickly snaps back into place. They continue to exchange blows, and Chobei manages to push the monster back, as it notes that his Tao is continuously growing. Chobei doesn't know what's happening to him, and the monster suggests he is transforming into something that isn't human, but he isn't bothered, saying that nothing in the world remains the same. We learn that when the brothers were taken by the bandits, they weren't convinced that the boys could join them because of their privileged upbringing, but Chobei cut his own eye to persuade them, and it's how he was accepted into their group. Chobei charges at the doshi as he endures the energy blasts, and he manages to land a hit on its navel, which makes it cough up blood, confirming that the navel is its weak point. The doshi jumps back, launching an energy blast, but Chobei manages to dodge it. He mentions how he can now see the energy around its body, and this scares the doshi, calling on the monsters to help him, but Toma has already defeated them. The monster gathers Tao energy using his hand, but Chobei stomps on it, and he replicates the technique, using it to punch a hole into the doshi's stomach. He senses the doshi's Tao, and he realizes it's on the brink of death, so he starts asking questions about the Tenshin. At that moment, Toma becomes worried, as he notices marks on Chobei's body, which look like vines, and they appear to be growing. We learn that the scar on Mei's body is similar. Tamiya tries to learn Tao while fighting, asking for Mei's advice, but she tells him he's doing it wrong. They observe Gabimaru as he fights, but Mei notes that he also doesn't get it. Fuchi sees Mei as a mystery, wondering who she is, as Gabimaru recalls how the girl used her power to save him, so he concludes she isn't a normal human. The doshi leading the pack recognizes Mei, so he attacks Tamiya, who manages to block, but he isn't able to stop the monster from taking Mei. The doshi says he has been looking for her, revealing how she was banished from the palace, and she disappeared from Horahai. They were forbidden from searching for her, but the monster is happy to stumble upon her. Gabimaru asks what's going on, and the doshi says she doesn't belong with the humans, as he reveals she feeds off of humans just like the Tenshin. The monster implores Mei to return to Horahai, but Mei looks at Gabimaru with a sad look on her face, so he goes to her, saying he doesn't want her to cry. The doshi's colleague appears, and together, they summon centipedes and butterflies to their side. Tamiya tries to attack, but he is immediately stopped by a Tao attack, and the doshi proceeds to assault them, but they all get pushed back. Gabimaru wonders why they want Mei, so the doshi explains how she helps them with their Tao training. They reveal there are 5 steps to mastering Tao, and the most important one requires a partner, since it requires the participants to make love. The doshi explains how all things possess yin and yang energies, and both energies circulate when a male and female join together. The doshi want her because she possesses the highest quality of yin energy, which can be made to circulate with their yang energy. They also reveal that Mei has the same origins as the Tenshin, but she is inferior because, unlike them, she only possesses yin energy, which is the same reason why she was banished from the palace, leaving her as a training partner for the doshis. They ask Mei to return, but Gabimaru becomes enraged hearing this, refusing to let them have her. The doshis transform themselves, similar to how Zujin transformed himself into a flower monster. Tamiya struggles against the butterfly monster, while Gabimaru uses his fire technique to destroy his opponent's arm. The monster fires a barrage of Tao attacks, which Gabimaru dodges even though he can't see. The 2 warriors fall back as the butterflies pursue them, but Gabimaru uses a fire-breathing technique to create a firewall. Gabimaru notes how he can now sense Tao vaguely, but he wants to detect it more precisely. At that moment, Fuchi tells them he has deciphered Mei's words, saying their minds must be both strong and weak to see Tao. Mei touches Gabimaru's hands, helping him sense his own Tao, as Fuchi goes on to explain that Tao requires a specific state of mind, and he tells Gabimaru to weaken his mind. This confuses him at first, but he remembers the moment he shared with Sagiri, and he begins to grasp the concept. He prepares to face the monsters, as Mei comments that Gabimaru's Tao is enormous. The doshi attacks him with Tao blasts, but he clearly sees it approaching, dodging all the attacks, and he dashes toward the monster. As Gabimaru closes the distance, the doshi tries to punch him, but he evades, as he notes that he can now predict attacks from sensing the movement of one's Tao. The monster follows up, but Gabimaru just touches its fist, causing its arm to break, and he lands a kick on both of the monsters. Tamiya doesn't want to be upstaged, so he charges at the centipede monster, slashing it in half while Gabimaru burns the butterfly doshi. Meanwhile, the others are able to open the giant door, allowing them to enter Horahai, but a Tenshin named Mudan suddenly decapitates Hako. The Tenshin tells them they are the first humans to reach that place, and Yuzuri becomes scared, so she tries to run, but Mudan instantly grabs onto her, saying he just wants to talk. Hako tells them Mudon is a Tensen, and he reveals he has accelerated Hako's transformation so he will soon lose his awareness. Hako wants his soul to be invited into Horai, but Mudon tells him their religion was just a lie, which was invented to maintain order on the island. He adds that the island is a place for conducting human experiments, as he shows them the Kyoshi, which are creatures he made using humans. Mudon says there is no elixir on the island, and he reveals that if a human consumes tan, they will turn into a tree, just like Hako and the other villagers. He tells them their journey has come to an end, telling them to go with him, but Yuzuri uses her substitution jutsu, attacking him from behind and cutting off his head. They proceed to run away, thinking the threat has been dealt with, but he quickly regenerates, ordering the Kyoshi to attack Yuzuri, who manages to evade. We learn that Yuzuri knows something similar to Tao, which is known as Chi, but she still hasn't mastered it. Mudon invites her to be his Tao training partner, as he uses a Tao attack to blast Sagiri away. As he explains his technique to Yuzuri, Senna cuts him up, and Yuzuri drinks a certain liquid, causing fluids to come out of her body. She reveals that her ninjutsu allows her to secrete the liquids that she swallows, which happens to be snake poison. She uses her ability to bind Mudon, using the poison to burn his skin before slicing him into pieces. But Mudon regenerates, and he comments on her abilities, seeing it as an application of Tao, but he says she still has room for improvement. Senta and Yuzuri strike at him, but he casually dodges their attacks, before grabbing onto Yuzuri's leg and pushing Senta back. Hako tells Sagiri about the Tensen's weakness, as Mudon lectures Yuzuri about Tao. But Sagiri suddenly interrupts them, forcing him to jump away. Mudon notes that Sagiri has an average amount of Tao, thinking she can't do anything, but she launches her sword at his navel and she cuts him open. We learn that the source of Tao is located at the navel, so it serves as the Tensen's weakness. However, Mudon is unaffected, saying Sagiri hasn't mastered Tao, but Sagiri remains calm, and she suddenly exudes Tao energy as she launches a slash which scratches Mudon's face. The wound doesn't regenerate, and we learn that Sagiri has been able to sense Tao all along. Mudon prepares to strike Sagiri, but Yuzuri restrains him, and Sagiri prepares to cut him down. He blows Sagiri away, ordering the Kyoshi to deal with Yuzuri, but Senna makes quick work of them. Sagiri continues to pursue Mudon, but he keeps dodging, so her allies cut off his limbs, giving her an opening. However, Mudon takes to the skies, and he bombs them with Tao attacks. As Sagiri takes cover, she realizes her body is reaching its limit, but Yuzuri tells her not to give up, saying she can kill the Tensen. Yuzuri wraps snake poison around Mudon's leg, but he bombs her with Tao attacks, which she endures, before slamming him into the ground. Mudon gets back up, but Senna stabs him from behind, restricting his movements, as Sagiri goes in for the kill. She slices through his navel, making him fall to the ground. Mudon is defeated, but Sagiri despairs, knowing the elixir doesn't exist. In a flashback, we learn that Senta never wanted to be an executioner, but his family forced him into it. He studied religion to rationalize killing people, which he was praised for, allowing him to rank up. But since meeting Yuzuri, he became jealous of how free she is, and he started to admire her. Back in the present, Gabimaru stands above the remains of the doshi, thinking he still needs to master the use of Tao. He asks Mei why she followed him, but blood suddenly oozes from his nose as he collapses. Yuzuri notices a number of strange flowers in their area. As she points them out, they suddenly attack her, but Senna shields her, and he starts dreaming about drawing paintings of Yuzuri as he enters eternal bliss. The attack instantly transforms him into flowers, and a huge flower monster appears before them, and Mudon is revealed to be still alive, and he undergoes his transformation. Mudon attacks them with his flowers, but Shion arrives and saves them just in time. He tells Narugai to help them get away, while he prepares to fight against Mudon, recognizing him as a Tensen. He seems to have figured out Tao by sensing the waves of a creature, and he thinks he can kill Mudon by directly cutting his wave. Narugai cuts the roots of the flowers, transforming Senta, and it seems to be able to slow his transformation. Sagiri wonders what they can do for him, and Yuzuri decides to try and heal him. Meanwhile, Shion fights against Mudon, and he even manages to knock him back. Yuzuri is surprised he is so strong, and Sagiri can see that Mudon isn't able to heal from Shion's attacks. But Shion took some damage in the exchange, and flowers start to grow on his body. He instantly cuts all of the flowers off, but Sagiri thinks he is losing too much blood. Sagiri wants to help him, so Nurugai suggests they all attack together, but Yuzuri claims she is all out of energy. Nurugai suddenly hugs her, and she hugs Sagiri as well, and they wonder what she is doing. Nurugai says she used to do it to her grandfather to energize him, and she tried it on Shion as well, which seemed to help him recover. Sagiri thinks it has something to do with Tao, but they quickly go to help Shion. Sagiri tells him about the weak point in the navel, but Shion notes that Mudon has 2 navels, and just being scratched by his attack would be fatal. Sagiri reveals they covered themselves in Yuzuri's mucus, which should be able to prevent scratches and stop flowers from growing, so they plan to act as decoys for him. Mudon appears behind Nurugai, and Sagiri protects her, cutting down Mudon's vines. Shion is impressed at her ability to sense waves, and she is able to use it to predict the attacks. Shion prepares to attack, but Mudon starts blasting him with energy attacks. Sagiri and Nurugai cut down some of his vines, and Shion takes the chance to cut one of Mudon's legs. Mudon's regeneration becomes slower, and Sagiri thinks they could actually win, but she is reaching her limits. Mudon gets back up, unleashing his energy at all of them, but Shion continues to charge forward, remembering how he was forced to let Tenza die. He refuses to run away again, and Sagiri and Nurugai manage to pin Mudon's hands. Shion gathers all his power into his blade, but as he is about to strike, he wonders if the navel is really its weakness, because he doesn't sense waves coming from that area. Time is running out, but Senda suddenly tells him the weakness is the center of the flower, because that's where all the nutrients in a flower are located, and Shion slashes it, allowing him to defeat Mudon just in time. Sagiri rushes to check up on Senda, but Yuzuri says he doesn't have much more time. She reveals she only has 1 more salve, but she thinks it would be better used on Shion. Sagiri doesn't want to accept this, but Yuzuri says she is just a realist, telling Senda he isn't going to make it. She tells him to be true to himself in his final moments, and Senda imagines being in the arms of the one he admired. After this, they wonder what they should do next, and Sagiri refuses to lose any more people, no longer seeing them as criminals and executioners, but she decides to do everything she can so that they can all make it back alive. Meanwhile, Gabimaru wakes up and he is instantly on edge. Tamiya tells him to relax, and Gabimaru wonders where they are. Fuchi reveals they found a cave halfway up the valley, and it seems Gabimaru has lost his memory. Sagiri's group continues forward, and they are surprised to see a number of statues and temples. They decide to get some rest in one of the buildings, and Yuzuri finds them a change of clothes. Shion reviews the information that they have so far. He notes that Tao is a power that everyone possesses, and mastering it will allow a person to achieve superhuman abilities, but he says they have to be careful using it, because Tao is life itself, and if they use too much, it could cause physical or mental changes, or even affect memories and consciousness, and in the worst case, overuse will likely lead to death. Yuzuri wonders what they should do since the elixir of life doesn't exist, because the shogun won't accept that, but Sagiri tells them how Gabimaru told her it exists, since his village chief was actually immortal. However, Yuzuri thinks that might have just been an illusion, because shinobi often use them to brainwash and control children when they are young, saying they did the same thing in her village. Yuzuri also finds the story about Gabimaru's wife strange, because shinobi are just pawns. She thinks his wife might not even exist, and she could have been another one of the chief's illusions used to motivate him. We see Gabimaru has completely lost his memory, only remembering that he is Gabimaru the Hollow, and he plays along with the other 3 to get information about where he is. Mei asks if he is okay, and he says he is fine, but she can sense a disturbance in his Tao. Sagiri keeps watch at night, and Shion joins her. She thinks about all the people they have lost, and she worries about Gabimaru. Shion wonders if she likes him, but Sagiri finds it all too sad that he is trying so hard to get back to his wife, but she might not even exist. Even though he's a killer, she doesn't think he is a bad person, so she hopes that he can be reunited with her. We see government officials talking to the executioner Jiga, who is the only one who returned from the island, and he tells them how the criminals and executioners were sent to get the elixir of life. He explains how Chobei killed the criminal he was guarding, but we see that he was happy since he had an excuse to return home early. but the currents washed him ashore, and he doesn't know how he made it back alive, telling the officials to stay away from the island since it's not of this world. He notes that only idiots would try to explore it, but they become upset hearing this, since they think he indirectly insulted them. Another executioner named Shu apologizes for his behavior, and they know about his fearsome reputation, so they just let it slide. But one of them reads the shogun's orders, and notes that the strongest members of the Yamada clan must head to the island. After that, Shu scolds Jiga for disrespecting the officials, so he apologizes for what happened, and we learn that Shu is looking after the members of the Yamada clan in Aizen's absence. He notes that the shogun plans to send shinobi next, since they slaughtered the other criminals during the test of strength, and he tells Jiga he needs to return to the island. He refuses to go back since he knows how dangerous it is, but Shu is worried about the other members of their clan, since Aizen hasn't sent them a report as promised. A man asks them about the giant head in the town, and we learn that Jiga brought it back with him to prove that the island is dangerous, but he didn't get the chance to show it to the officials. Shu touches it and realizes it's already dead, since he can't sense its life force, and he meets with the other executioners from the Yamada clan, telling them they'll head to the island. We cut to Rien, as Adoshi asks him if the body and soul are two different things, so he explains that it isn't the case, since they're both just a form of Tao. A Tensen named Taofa shows them their new training ground, and Rien thinks it's impressive since it has everything they need, and it even has a room where they can focus on Bacha Jutsu. We learn that Bacha Jutsu is a form of training where they get intimate, and a Tensen named Giltha thinks there are better ways to train. But Rien disagrees with him, and explains that it can help them draw out new strength depending on who they join with. Gyutha finishes Bacha Jutsu, and his partner is impressed by his performance, but Taofa notices that he's exhausted, so she gives him tan to drink. But she realizes she forgot to add the ingredient that makes the drink glow, so she asks Zujin where she can find it, and he tells her he doesn't know. Meanwhile, Sagiri tells the others they should find Gabimaru and Mei, and notes that they should meet them outside the gate. Yuzuri thinks the mission doesn't matter, so they should just leave as soon as possible, but Sagiri knows that she just wants executioners to join her side after they escape. She admits that it's true, but Sagiri tells her she also wants to leave the island with everyone, and notes that she respects the way Yuzuri thinks, but she isn't sure if Gabimaru will make it. Yuzuri notes that she saw a destroyed wall near the gate, and thinks he's responsible for it, so she believes that he's already there, but she asks Sagiri what she'll do about his wife after they meet him. We see Gabimaru with the others, and we learn that they're on their way to the castle, but he doesn't know what to do, since his memories still haven't returned. They bump into Chobei, who suddenly attacks Gabimaru, and everyone prepares to join the fight, but Gabimaru jumps on top of him and breaks his neck. He notes that the fight was boring, but Chobei suddenly throws him to the ground, and Fuchi realizes that Chobei's neck has healed. Gabimaru launches a rock to distract him, and he gouges his eye out, so Chobei kicks him away. But he realizes that Gabimaru got his leg, and as Gabimaru continues to clash with him, he creates an opening and bites through his neck. Fuchi notes that he fights like a beast, but Chobei immediately recovers, and shatters the ground with his leg. He tells Gabimaru he's weak, and starts to beat him up, as Tamiya notices that he got weaker after he was knocked out. Mei realizes that his Tao is strange, and explains that he isn't as powerful as he used to be, since he's missing something important. He scratches Chobei's face, but he immediately regenerates, and tells Toma to deal with the others. So he rushes toward them, and he thinks Tamiya is the easiest target since he only has one arm. But Tamiya stops him and smashes him to the ground, telling him he doesn't need to draw his sword to defeat him. Toma charges in again, but Tamiya hits him and pins his sword to the ground, telling him he has talent, but his abilities are still lacking. Tamiya beats him up, and thinks he let Chobei do all the fighting because he seems like a total noob. But he explains that he'll do anything Chobei tells him to do, and notes that he hates people who form large groups, revealing that all the bandits were like pawns to him. He gets back up, and Tamiya notices that his grip has improved, but he orders the Doshi to attack Mei and Fuchi. So it rushes toward them, and Fuchi tells Mei to stay back while he takes care of it. Chobei pushes Gabimaru back, and he thinks he has the advantage, since he can read his movements. He slams Gabimaru's head, but he suddenly covers himself with flames, as he recalls how the chief taught him to deal as much damage as possible before he dies. He burns Chobei with his ninjutsu and takes him down, and he's worried that this could be the end for him, since he can't regenerate fast enough. But he thinks about Toma and decides to go all out, saying he's willing to sacrifice everything for his brother. We see that Fuchi has defeated the Doshi, but Chobei transforms and pushes Gabimaru back, and he notes that he can feel himself breaking. He overpowers Gabimaru, who uses his ninjutsu to burn everything around him, but Chobei survives the attack. He starts to lose control, and Gabimaru struggles to dodge his attacks, as Tamiya wonders why he isn't using Tao, so Mei explains that he forgot how to use it. Gabimaru knows that he can't win, but he thinks it doesn't matter if he dies, since another shinobi will replace him. He's ready to sacrifice his life to defeat Chobei, and he suddenly hears his wife's voice, but he goes berserk and rushes forward. Fuchi notes that they've both lost control, and Toma realizes that Chobei decided to go all out, because he's fighting to protect him. Gabimaru avoids his tentacles, and Chobei's vision darkens as he continues to attack, but he suddenly hears Toma call out to him, and realizes that he hurt his brother. Toma cries as he apologizes for being a burden, and begs Chobei to wake up, thinking he turned into a monster because he's always fighting alone. He finally regains control, but Gabimaru realizes it's his chance to finish them off, and prepares to burn them with his ninjutsu. Mei thinks he'll die if he continues to fight, so she splits the ground open, and Gabimaru kicks a rock toward Chobei, who uses his tentacle to save Toma, and promises to return for him. He falls into the abyss, and Mei collapses from exhaustion, but everyone's surprised to see she has grown again. We cut to Sagiri and the others, as they see strange statues in the castle, and Shion notes that he hears something ahead of them. They head to the gate, where they meet Gabimaru's group, and Hako realizes that Mei used her powers, asking them if they passed through the valley. Tamiya notes that they killed all the monsters in their path, and Hako can't believe they even defeated a Doshi, since he's never seen anyone do that in 1,000 years. He realizes that his companions are amazing, and thinks they might be able to change the island, since they're strong enough to defeat the Tensins. Fuchi visits Senna's grave, where he cries as he remembers the moments he spent with him, and Shion realizes that there are only 8 expeditioners left. He notes that they should leave the castle as soon as possible, but Sagiri notes that Mei and Gabimaru still need to recover, and Tamiya thinks they should kill Toma since he might betray them. But Sagiri stops him, since she doesn't want to watch Toma die, and she notes that they shouldn't kill him unless he tries anything. She prepares to fight Tamiya, but Yuzuri interrupts them, and notes that Gabimaru is on the brink of death, so Sagiri thinks they should treat his wounds. Shion notices that he has consumed his Tao energy, and Fuchi explains that he tried to patch up Gabimaru's wounds, but he still can't recover since his core is damaged. He wants to know what's going on, since he doesn't trust his companions, and Sagiri asks him if he's okay, but he tells her to leave him alone. Shion tells him he'll die if he isn't careful, but he thinks it's okay, so she realizes that he isn't acting like his usual self. The others protect her as he tries to attack her, but she knows that the abnormality in his Tao confused his memories, and Shion realizes that his soul is worn down. She knows that it's because he never stopped fighting, and he thinks about killing her as she walks closer. But she explains that she can heal him with her Tao, and tells him not to worry since she's an important ally. He still doesn't trust her, so she becomes angry and knocks him down, telling him she's more than just his important ally, since they have a special connection. He tries to push her away, but she grabs onto his arms, and Tamiya wonders if they're doing bachujutsu. So Mei explains that it isn't the case, but notes that the process is similar, since their Tao is circulating through touch, and Shion knows that it's working since their Tao is compatible. Gabimaru realizes that his strength has returned, and Sagiri reminds him about his wife, telling him they need to work together to escape the island. The group heads to a cave, but Shion tells everyone they shouldn't let their guard down, since the Tensins can still find them. Tamiya isn't afraid of them, but Yuzuri knows that it's because he's never fought them before, and she tells him how powerful they are. Shion asks Gabimaru if he's fought them before, and he notes that he met one of them at the gate, so everyone realizes that his memories are back. He apologizes for the trouble he caused, and notes that he learned not to overuse his Tao, telling everyone he wants to see his wife again. Yuzuri tells him the chief used an illusion to fool him, and she thinks his wife doesn't really exist, but he notes that his goal hasn't changed, since he still believes that his wife is real. He explains that he can't prove it, but he still remembers everything about her, so he's convinced that she isn't an illusion. He tells everyone he wants to see her again, but Yuzuri wonders why he shared his weakness, since shinobis are supposed to keep it a secret. but Shion thinks his wife is the source of his strength since his Tao grew when he talked about her. Chobei crashes to the ground, and he realizes he lost sight of himself since he was consumed by Tao, but he thinks he'll be unstoppable once he masters it. He sees monsters in the area, so he defeats all of them and notes that they taste terrible, but Rian suddenly appears behind him and asks him if he's the one who killed Mudan. Rian destroys his arm, but he immediately regenerates, so Rian finds him interesting. Fuchi lets the doshi go, since he no longer wants to dissect it, and he realizes that Mei still hasn't recovered. He realizes she's a Tensen, and notes that he can make something to treat her fever, but he asks her to tell them about the Tensens. Yuzuri reminds him that her vocabulary is limited, but he explains that he's used to interpreting, so it shouldn't be a problem. We see Gabimaru with the others, and he tells them to attack him, since he needs to sharpen his battle instincts. So they all prepare to take him on, and Tamiya sets Toma free, telling him to use his sword to fight Gabimaru. He knows that he can't overuse Tao during his battles, but he thinks he can't defeat the Tensens without it, so he needs to master how to use it. Toma charges in with his sword, as Gabimaru realizes he's fast, but he easily dodges his attacks and pushes him back. Tamiya chops him from behind, but he dodges the attack, and he realizes he can't overpower Tamiya with his brute force, so he aims for his weak point and kicks him away. Nurugai rushes forward, and the others follow behind, but Gabimaru grabs onto her and manipulates the surrounding Tao to blast the others away. She's amazed by his technique, but he still thinks he needs to improve it, and Shion tells him about the different types of Tao, telling him they can defeat the Tensens if he learns how to use it. Toma begs Tamiya to teach him how to fight, but Tamiya doesn't trust him, so he cuts his hair to prove his resolve. Tamiya realizes he's serious, so he decides to teach him how to fight, and Toma is determined to get stronger so that he can save his brother. We return to Chobei, as Rian realizes that his warped Tao mixed with something on the island, which is why the flowers didn't eat him. Rian launches balls of energy, but Chobei manages to dodge them, and he knows he can't defeat Rian unless he goes all out, so he transforms his body and destroys Rian with his tentacles. He thinks the fight is over since Rian didn't regenerate, but Rian's clones suddenly appear behind him, and he finds Chobei interesting, so he wants to take him to the castle for research. Chobei tries to resist, but realizes he's already at his limit, and Rian knocks him out. He later wakes up tied to a bed, and Rian appears before him in female form, as he notes that he wants to use Chobei for his research. But he notes that he wants to perform Bacha Jutsu with him, since he thinks it's the best way to understand his Tao. He tells him about the 5 different attributes of Tao, and asks Chobei if he has any requests, but he suddenly breaks free, and asks Rian to tell him about the island. We return to Mei, as she reveals that everything on the island was made by the first emperor of the Qin dynasty Jofuku, who wanted to achieve immortality. He did his research on Taoism, and learned that all things are made from Tao, so he experimented on the creatures on the island, thinking he could create an immortal being by joining the Tao of different species. He created the Tensens by merging human and plant Tao, and they cultivated their Tao for over 1,000 years, which is why humans don't stand a chance against them. Yuzuri wonders why they never left the island, so Mei explains that it's because they worked on a special concoction, and everyone realizes it's the elixir of immortality. But Fuchi explains that it's still under development, and notes that the Tan is a prototype of their research, which allows them to increase their lifespan by consuming another person's life force. Fuchi notes that their Tao isn't self-sustaining, so they die if they use a large amount of it, but Yuzuri wonders what they'll do when they perfect the elixir of immortality. Mei thinks they'll grant Jofuku's wish, and we learn that he took children and craftsmen to the Eastern Sea, but went missing afterwards, so Fuchi thinks he might still be on the island. Chobei asks Rian about the monsters, so he reveals that they were all made for a purpose, and notes that the Hakos were created to observe how immortals live, while the monsters exist to maintain order. He explains that everything has Tao, so they can manipulate the natural laws of the world by learning how to control it, but it's harder to manipulate living things, which is why he wants to study Chobei's Tao. He asks Rian if he plans to turn everyone on the island into Tan, but he reveals that he'll target the mainland after he comes up with the perfect Tan, and invites Chobei to join them. He knows he can't defeat Rian, and he agrees to do Bacha Jutsu with him, so that he can adapt and get stronger. We return to Mei, as everyone realizes that her arm has turned to wood, and she reveals that her body isn't perfect, so she turns into a tree when she uses Tao. She adds that they can't use circulation to heal her Tao, since Rien damaged her core, and she reveals that they were Jofuka's first students. But Rien killed people for the elixir, and she didn't agree with his methods, so he tortured her and used her as the Doshi's training buddy, which is why she ran away from Horai. Everyone realizes she's about to turn into a tree, so Hako tells her to consume his Tao, telling her it doesn't matter since his time is running out. He explains that he wants to atone for his sins, since he saw his daughter in her, so he made her stay in the village, even though he knew she wanted to leave the island. He tells her to forgive him, since he used her to get over his daughter's death, and he wants her to absorb his life force so that he can make up for it. She tells him she enjoyed every moment she spent with him, since they were like a real family, and she cries as she consumes his life force. After that, Tamiya is sad since she's back to being a little girl, and everyone thinks he's pathetic, but she suddenly senses Shu approaching the island. We learn that the shogunate has high expectations for Shu's group, since 50 shinobis have been sent to escort the elite members of the Yamada clan, but their manager Yoki thinks there's no reason to send so many warriors to the island. He asks Shu why 2 of his executioners are unranked, so he explains that the kid Kiyomaru wasn't given a rank because of his age, but he's one of the best swordsmen in the Yamada clan. The other executioner, Isuzu, also wasn't given a rank since she's a woman, but Shu assures Yoki that she's a formidable fighter. Kiyomaru offers to demonstrate his skills, since he knows that everyone's looking down on him, and he cuts a ninja's mask, but he wonders why the shinobis didn't even move. Isuzu tells him to stop being rude, and they both put their sword away, but Yoki wonders if they'll be okay. The leader of the shinobis tells them not to worry, explaining that the Yamadas are their masters, and they're willing to throw their lives away to demonstrate their loyalty. Kiyomaru tells him to prove his loyalty, so he tells another shinobi named Shija to take care of everything, and he sings a song as he takes his own life. Shija notes that they don't have a will of their own, so the Yamadas can trust them and use them as tools, but Kiyomaru notes that he'll never understand ninjas. We learn that the chief ordered the shinobis to join the mission, since he wants to get rid of Gabimaru, and he tells them to dedicate their lives to that purpose. Shu still doesn't trust them, since he thinks they're just like criminals, so he notes that only the executioners should look for the elixir, and tells Kiyomaru to kill the criminals on the island. They reach the island, and Shu sees a monster, but he tells Isuzu to hold onto his sword, since he doesn't want to use the gift that was given to him by the shogun. He blows its head off, and everyone's amazed by his strength, but a group of monsters attacks him, so he wipes the floor with them. He takes his sword from Isuzu, and tells her she doesn't need to dirty her blade, since he'll take care of everything. Shion realizes that Shu's group has arrived, but Gabimaru wonders if he'll be their ally, and Sagiri is confident that he'll help them out, telling Gabimaru he's the strongest member of the Yamada clan. Shion reveals that they train together, so he knows that Shu can also use Tao, and Sagiri notes that he has a fearsome reputation. She explains that when the leader of a Yakuza clan was captured, the officials struggled to extract information from him. So Shu executed his underlings in front of him to make him talk, and slaughtered all 20 members of his clan. The shogun was happy when he learned about it, and he gave Shu a special sword and uniform to reward him for wiping out the Yakuza clan. Sagiri admits that she had a crush on him when she was a child, and notes that he's the reason why she has a rank in the Yamada clan, since he begged an official to recognize her skills. She thinks he'll help them since he's a good person at heart, but Shion disagrees, and explains that they got the story wrong, since he executed more than just 20 members of the Yakuza clan. Shion reveals that he killed more than 100 people, and explains that he didn't spare the infants and elderly, since he thought they would inherit the business. Shion notes that he likes Shu, but he doesn't think Shu will work with them, since he sees criminals as trash. Shu sees Aizen's remains, and he recalls how Aizen took him in to become an executioner after his parents were killed by criminals. He notes that the killers haven't been caught yet, and he wants to execute them when he gets the chance, but he explains that he'll sever the blade's head so that they will suffer a painful death. Aizen tells him it's pointless, and teaches him how to wield a sword, telling him he'll sharpen his sword whenever he damages it. We return to the present, as Shu mourns Aizen's death, and he buries his remains. He recites a prayer for him, and Shija realizes that the executioners are weirdos, but she thinks she can outsmart them to complete her mission. A giant suddenly captures one of the ninjas, and Adoshi calls the other giants, telling them to capture everyone. One of them throws a net at Shu, but Kiyomaru and Isuzu protect him, and tell the giants not to disturb him. Isuzu deflects a giant's attack and cuts its leg, and Kiyomaru finishes it off, but they realize they're surrounded. Shija orders the shinobis to kill a giant, so they work together to take it down, and Shija knows that they're weaker than the executioners, but even Gabimaru can't defeat them if they work together. Shu finishes his prayer, but a giant suddenly charges at him, so he cuts it into pieces. He breaks the edge of his sword, and notes that he'll kill the monsters as painfully as possible, but the doshi isn't afraid of him, so he prepares to take him on. But Shu easily defeats him, and we see that the giants have been wiped out, so Shu starts to interrogate him, asking him about his allies. Chiga thinks they should just go home, but Shu becomes angry and asks him why he didn't even draw his sword, so Isuzu tells Shu to calm down. He apologizes for being rude to his senior, but explains that they must kill all the monsters on the island, since he wants to make them suffer for messing with the Yamadas. We cut to Fuchi, as he notes that they can't identify the people who landed, and Shion thinks they should split into two groups. He notes that one group will get the elixir, while the other one will secure an escape route, and Gabimaru mentions how Mei told them they would pass through Horai either way. Shion tells everyone about the Tao attributes, explaining that they each have strong and weak matchups, and he thinks it will help them defeat the Tencents. But Yuzuri thinks it isn't good enough, since there's no guarantee that they'll survive if they head to Horai. He tells her she's right, since there's still much they don't know, so they can't predict what will happen. He gives everyone a chance to back out, but they all decide to go with his plan, since they know they need to work together to escape the island. They discuss their plan, and Fuchi notes that Horai is a massive citadel, which was modeled after a palace in China. He explains that it's possible to leave the island, but there are monsters in the surrounding waters that prevent them from escaping. But he tells everyone that if they infiltrate Horai and steal the elixir, they can use the boats near the sluice gate to escape the island, since the monsters were trained not to attack them. Mei reveals that she knows where to find the elixir, but Shion knows that they need to pass through the enemy territory, so he asks Yuzuri and Gabimaru to teach them stealth techniques. Yuzuri shows everyone how to suppress their Tao, but explains that the effect will wear off if they speak, and she thinks they can use it to sneak into Horai, since it worked on Mudan. She tells everyone to focus, but she hits Sagiri and Tamiya, since they can't keep their minds still. Gabimaru tells everyone how Tao works, explaining that they can use it to dislocate their joints, and even stop their hearts from beating, but he wants them to give his exercises a try. After that, Tamiya is exhausted from their training, since he doesn't know how to control Tao, but he wonders why Toma didn't have a hard time, so he explains that it's because he's talented. He thinks he can now beat Tamiya, so he becomes upset and prepares to fight, but Shion interrupts them, and notes that they need to assign groups. He tells everyone their Tao's attributes, and we learn that he and Sagiri have the wood attribute, while Tamiya and Gabimaru have fire. Shion explains that the attributes influence each other, since they can enhance another person's Tao using a process called restoration, but it's also possible to weaken them through hindering. Mei tells everyone about the attributes of the Tencents, and Shion notes that they should remember it, since it will give them a fighting chance against the Tencents. They split into two groups, and Shion explains that Yuzuri will be in the elixir group, since she knows how to control her Tao. She isn't happy hearing this, since she wants to be in the escape group, which will secure a boat under Horai and open the sluice gate. Tamiya wonders why Mei has decided to join them, since she can just leave the island without the elixir, and Gabimaru knows that she has another goal, so he asks her to tell everyone about it. She explains that she wants to leave the island because she doesn't agree with Rien's methods, but notes that she wants to see him again, so that she can ask him why he has changed, since he used to be so nice to her. She mentions that she'll leave the island after she sees Rien, and Gabimaru decides to help her, since he knows that her life will never return to normal unless her wish is fulfilled. We see the Tencents as they finish completing their ritual, but we see that Chobei is with them, and Jufa doesn't like him. So he tries to attack him, but Chobei notes that he can now see his movements. Rien tells Jufa not to harm Chobei since he's his test subject, and he takes Chobei around the palace, as he explains that it uses a feng shui design. Chobei realizes he has gotten stronger, since he was able to stop Jufa's attack, but he knows that Rien is on another level, so he can't beat him unless he finds out his weakness. Rien takes Chobei to his lab, and shows him the Banko flower, which was made to refine large amounts of tan. But Rien explains that it's difficult to preserve tan, since the flowers consume human Tao over time, so he needs Chobei's help for his experiment. He tells him not to worry, since they'll only use a small part of him, telling him it won't matter since he'll just regenerate. We see Gabimaru with the Elixir group, and after he looks around, he gives the signal for the escape group to proceed with their plan. We learn that Mei told them about the layout of Horai, so they know where the Tensins are training, and she also told them that the Elixir is in the Ranten Palace, where Rien's lab is located. But she explains that he stays in the main palace at night, so they can steal the Elixir while avoiding the Tensins, and Gabimaru tells everyone not to fight them at all costs. Toma notes that it will be too dark for them to see anything inside the structures, but Shion explains that it won't be a problem since the Elixir group can see with their Tau. They see a structure filled with Tau energy since the corpses used to make Tan are stored there, so they realize it's the Ranten Palace. They eliminate the guards and sneak into the palace, but the Tensin Ran suddenly appears before them and reveals that he was expecting them. We learn that Chobei sensed Toma's Tau and told the Tensins that Gabimaru's group is on their way, so Rian ordered his friends to capture them. Ran prepares to fight, as he reveals that his friends are waiting for the other humans so that they can collect their Tau and offer them to Jofuku. The escape group realizes they've been separated, and the other Tensins prepare to take them on, so Gabimaru realizes that their plan failed. They switch to Plan B and prepare to fight the Tensins with everything they've got, but Ran tells them it's pointless. He tells Mei to return to the Tensins, since he doesn't want to fight her, and he notes that the Elixir of Life will be completed soon, revealing that it will no longer turn people into trees. He reveals that they have completed their research with Chobei's help, but they still need to gather the expeditioner's Tau to produce it, which is why Rian has started the Hakiji Fukusho ritual. He thinks she and Rian will finally reach an understanding, and she admits that she misses the Tensins, but notes that she only came to say goodbye to them, since she has decided to leave the island. He prepares to fight, and we learn that he's Gabimaru's weakness, since his Tau attribute is water. Sagiri realizes they're in trouble, but Gabimaru tells her to escape with Mei, and notes that he'll work with Yuzuri to defeat Ran. He thinks she can beat Ran, since her Earth Tau is his weakness, but Mei suddenly realizes they aren't in the Ranten Palace. Ran charges at Gabimaru, who dodges his attacks, and Yuzuri is amazed by their speed. Ran reveals that they're in his personal palace, and they wonder how they ended up there, since they thought the place was full of Tau energy because of the corpses. He explains that he created the illusion by manipulating the Tan of inanimate objects, and he reveals that he's the one who renovated Horai, so he can change its layout at any time. He traps Mei's foot and tells her to stay still, but Gabimaru rushes forward, and Ran is impressed by his moves. He knows that Gabimaru can't kill him because of his fire attribute, but Yuzuri suddenly appears behind him. She throws her Tau-infused kunai to attack him, but it has no effect, and he kicks them away. He reveals that he stretched his Tau thin and bundled it together to make it as tough as possible, and Gabimaru realizes that his body is covered with Tau armor. He explains that coordinated attacks won't work against him since there are no gaps in his armor, and Gabimaru charges in, but Ran traps his leg. They start to fight on a pillar, and he avoids Ran's attacks, but he falls as the pillar breaks. He launches rocks to attack Ran, but Ran kicks them back, and they hit him as he crashes to the ground. He gets back up and tells everyone not to worry, since everything's going as expected, telling Yuzuri it's time to execute their plan. He charges in again, but Ran notices that his Tau hasn't changed, so he thinks Gabimaru can't harm him, but Gabimaru suddenly punches him away. Rian prepares for the Hakiji Fukusho ritual, and we learn that he knows the names of Gabimaru and the others, since Chobei told him about them. He explains that he's willing to help the Tensins, provided that they keep Toma safe, and he notes that he wants to recruit him before the ritual. Rian writes the names of the expeditioners on his talismans, and he learns about their status, realizing that Shion has a strong mastery of Tau. Rian knows that he's about to fight Zujin, but his wood attribute isn't effective against Zujin's water, so he has no way of killing him. We learn that Nurugai also has the water attribute, so her attacks can damage Zujin, but Rian isn't worried since he knows she's weak. Zujin rushes toward them, but Rian suddenly senses a powerful rage, and he knows that emotions can affect a human's Tau, so he thinks he shouldn't underestimate them. Fuchi and Tamiya prepare to fight Jufa and Taufa, and we learn that Fuchi's metal attribute is good against Taufa. But Rian isn't worried, since he knows that Fuchi and Tamiya lack training with Tau, and he thinks Jufa's fire attribute will destroy them. We see that Toma is with them, but he's surprised to see Chobei, who invites him to join the Tensins. Rian is confident that they can defeat the humans, but he's worried about Gabimaru since he knows how dangerous he is. We learn that Gabimaru told everyone that Tao is like a current surrounding their bodies, and their attributes describe the direction of the flow. Restoration supports the flow, while hindrance stops it, but the Tensen's currents are so strong that the standard principles don't apply to them. He explains that they can defeat them by exerting more Tao, but they can also use their strengths against them by doing the exact opposite. He notes that weakening Tao will prevent restoration and hindrance, and explains that it's an application of everything he learned so far, telling everyone he learned a lot from watching them. We return to the present, as Gabimaru matches his breathing to Ran's Tao, and he manages to deflect his attacks. But he knows that dampening his Tao makes him vulnerable, so he'll be in trouble if Ran lands a direct hit. Ran is impressed by his skills, and tells him he has talent, since he was able to master Tao in less than a week, but he explains that it isn't talent. He reveals that he developed his skills because he was desperate to survive, and notes that he learned from the others who sacrificed their lives, so he doesn't want Ran to call it talent. Sagiri sets Mei free, and tells him they'll head to the Ranten Palace to look for the elixir, so Ran prepares to stop them, but Gabimaru kicks him away. He knows that it's their chance to get the elixir, since the Tensens are busy fighting, so he tells her to go for it. He prepares to attack Ran again, and he thinks Gabimaru plans to use his Tao against him, so he weakens his Tao, but Yuzuri suddenly lunges at him and cuts him in half. He realizes that she waited for him to remove his Tao armor, and she prepares to finish him off, but flowers suddenly come out of his body, and he transforms into his ultimate form. Rian realizes that Ran has decided to go all out, and he tells Jofuku it's all about to end, since they have finally completed the starter for the elixir, telling him they just need to use the expeditioner's life force to grow it. Ran smashes the ground, and attacks Gabimaru and Yuzuri with a barrage of punches, which sends them flying. Yuzuri is seriously injured, and Ran continues to destroy Gabimaru, who thinks he hasn't killed them since he plans to turn them into tan. He approaches Yuzuri, but Gabimaru throws a rock to distract him, and she realizes it's her chance to escape, but she takes Gabimaru and runs away with him. Ran catches up to them, so Gabimaru blocks his attack, but he mentions that he's had enough. He cuts through Gabimaru's shoulder, telling him he's given up on turning him into tan, since he's too difficult to capture alive. But that's where this video ends. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.